I'm out in the courtyard in front of the Waterhouse Gallery in Santa Barbara. We came down here to do some plein air painting, which we did over the course of the past week, and grabbed a photo that I had shot here, oh, I don't know, 6, 8 months ago. And I looked at it, and I'm looking at this piece of reference here for potential. I'm not gonna replicate it. And I often do this. I look at whatever I'm going to paint as what it, not just what it is, but what it can be. And that's where experience, a little bit of imagination, looking at a lot of wonderful, great art all helps. So, with that in mind, um, I've got my outdoor large scale setup here. And what I'm working on today is a piece of 18 by 24 hardboard or masonite. And what I did is I coated it with a coat of matte medium, or some people use, what do you call it? Uh, Clear gesso. This happens to be matte medium. So it's got a little bit of a tooth, but it's the same color as the board, which is kind of similar to the neutral tone that I work on, maybe a little bit warmer. So with that in mind, we're going to take a nice large brush, and we're going to lay some big tones in. And my intent is to push this back further. It's not going to be dark, a little bit darker, a lot more color, real dark. So that's my concept. Lightest, a little darker, more interesting color than what anything the photo shows. And down in here is going to be the high contrast dark. All right. So with that in mind, let's get going. Let's start with this area back behind. And what I'm going to do is take that into the blue range. The blue range, and not maybe just a pure blue. Maybe I'll kill it with a little bit of Naples, or excuse me, yellow ochre. So we'll start kind of up in here. A little bit of turp thrown into that, so it'll flow on there pretty nicely. Maybe a little bit more of a blue characteristic. But once again, I don't like to paint a flat color almost anywhere. Particularly the larger you paint, the less I like to paint just a big old flat color. So I will vary it. It's got a few little bit more ochre, a little bit more blue in spots. We're going to put some information back here later to make it feel like it is. It's more than just a shape, because it's going to be a feeling of rocks back there. In fact, I'll just grab a little bit of my burnt sienna right now, a little bit more blue, bring it in there, and we'll just bring a little bit of tonality. It's actually a little bit of warmth, and it's maybe just a touch darker. We'll just kind of throw that in there. All right, now we're going to go to this. That's going to be darker. It's going to be a little more neutral. Brown, or in this case, I have asphaltum laid out today. And asphaltum tends to be a little darker than a burnt umber, but also it's warmer. So if you hit it with some white, it warms up quite a bit. So is that what I want? I want a little bit darker. That feels pretty good right about there, huh? And we'll take it up here, down. It's got a nice light edge on it. It's got some nice colors, so I can vary it from time to time. I just threw some more ochre into it. I threw in some more burnt sienna, a little bit more Naples, add a few little warmths, maybe darken it as it goes down to the base, a little more blue. But a little color nuance change. That's a little bit than I actually wanted. So I'm going to take more realism. I'm back. I want to quite get a little bit of time out and delivered a commission painting here in Waterhouse, and people came in and picked it up last night. Thankfully, it went well. You never know with commissions, but thankfully they were very happy with it. And so there's our first two layers. All right, now we're going to this big mass in here. To make that a little more colorful. So I'm going to grab a lot of burnt sienna. My palette, whoa, I'm right near a restaurant and the smells are outrageous. Didn't mean to interrupt. But palette today, white, Naples yellow, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, radiant blue, sap green, and asphaltum. So we're going to start with just kind of laying in some nice warm tones up in here. We'll throw some more ochre into it.
Maybe just try speaking louder.
Huh?
Try speaking a little louder.
Speaking a little louder. I'm right next to my telephone, so hopefully I will try and shout. That's usually one problem I don't have. I usually, if anything, I'm probably a little too loud. So if I'm not, we're going to blame the phone in the outdoor situation here. So I'm just basically using white, burnt sienna, whatever residue I still have in the brush. And we want it definitely to darken as it goes down. And I'm going to add maybe a little of the asphaltum, which is a different kind of a brown. It's not going to have as much intensity. And I'm just looking. So what I should bring up what we're doing here today. I'm painting the concept of organic, and the rocks are very organic next to a much more controlled figure. So the figure is where the control is, and the background is where the fun happens. And it's just a matter of getting, so I threw a little blue, a little umber. We're going a little bit darker at the base. It's how I see it, first of all. So I'm not reinventing the wheel. Did a little sketch on, or with my pen, that it's a tromboy type pen. And we're going to go a little, I'm probably going to go darker still down here, but for right now, we're going to leave it at that. Move it up a little bit. So we're going to move it a little bit more. I brought some more, and I'm using a lot of turf. So I'm able to put the paint into the paint like that. Look at that. You notice I'm not using my gesso brush, and you're probably wondering why. I left it in my room. That's why. Nothing more complex than that. And I'm kind of a fan of using whatever I can. So if I don't have it, I'll find something else that'll work. That's the whole idea. Now we're going to get some interesting other colors in here. Right now we're staying very warm. And we're going to move paint, bring a little bit more blue into that color, a little bit darker as it goes behind this foreground cliff. I love the breakup of space, the composition here. I'm very pleased with that. It's one of the reasons I chose it. The small figure at the bottom with the big cliffs up the top. Actually, was painting 2 days ago in this very location. No figure, just a landscape. And it was wonderful. Beautiful, low tide, a lot of fun stuff going on. Okay, let's go up here. Oh, it's nice and slippery. I haven't worked on this matte medium for a while. I have done it before, but I haven't for a while. And I really like it. Very slippery. Darker, darker, over. Let's take more blue. Don't want to go too dark. I know I've told you guys many times, I like to save my darks, my darkest darks. So if I want to use them at the end, I can. And I want this to be a lot more high key than the painting, than the image that I'm painting. The image that I'm painting is quite low key, very dark, ominous. I want this to feel much brighter and more fun. So that's kind of why I'm using color schemes that you see me using here. A little bit more in this area. If I want to come back in with some brighter lights, I'll do that later. And I will throw some cools into it. I want to unify it, just like this at the bottom. I think what I could do is probably take the same color that I've just been using and bring a little bit of that, because I'm going to mix it right into this other color. And as I mix it, and maybe even back here. So it's blue, but there's activity in it. The activity is pretty much the textures of the cliffs themselves. So we want to get all this laid in. Now, I want to get a little bit of this in here. We're going to do that right now.
We came to see you.
Oh, good.
Hello.
So I'm going to darken a little bit right in here.
Diana. Hi, Allison. Oh, I'm so glad you came to see you.
So you guys can hear we're getting some on what goes out here, which is absolutely fine. And we're going to bring this cliff, which is much colder and it's lighter. And most of that is because of literally the makeup of the cliff, the minerals in it. So we're going to bring that a little bit lighter. All the colors thus so far I've mixed out of the same pot. I just keep remixing colors. So I'm using the same colors. This should be a little lighter. And there we go. That's pretty close. The surface that I'm working on is masonite, or this is hardboard, which is a form of masonite. And it is 18 by 24, and I have gessoed it. No, I haven't. Excuse me. I have not gessoed it. I've actually used matte medium, acrylic matte medium, which seals it, just like almost like a clear gesso would do. So we're going to bring this cooler and darker, or lighter, excuse me, because that's the way it appears. And I'm just improvising colors a little bit here. It goes a little darker as it goes down towards the base. So down around here, it's a little darker. And it's got textures. So texture right here. This is just a big old number 12, kind of a clumsy, like I'm not starting with a real controlled brush. I use my rosemary brushes when I want more control because they're so much better. This is just a big old, okay, so little strokes here. Now, while I've got that color, it's cooler. Let's see what happens when I move it. Nope, I don't like it. Let's try another color, blue and ochre, or blue and Naples yellow back into that color. Let's see what happens. Well, it's more interesting now. Hey, Warren. Warren Heil. God, Warren, I haven't talked to you in years. Started a furniture company, if I'm not mistaken, Warren. Let's give it a plug. Okay, keep going. Don't want to get too hung up in any one area for too long. So up here, I'm going to cool it down a little bit and keep it dark. Haven't gotten thick yet. Everything is relatively thin right now. I will start applying more body to the paint as we move along. Okay. Just I keep kind of glancing, and what I do is almost what you do with Impressionism, and that is I'm not looking at it. I look at it for about a second. I notice something, and I indicate it, and then move away from it rather than stay with it. Okay, let's go down to the ground plane for a little bit, okay? You know, I just noticed back here it's darker, but it's cool. So I'm going to take some ultramarine and white and use it in the color I was just using. And I'm exaggerating. Again, and I think I mentioned this at the beginning, that I was going to exaggerate colors that I see, because right now, if you look at it, it's almost depressing in terms of its color and value. It's a lot of steeped in deep shadow. So we're trying to kind of give it life. And During my illustration career, this is basically what we were hired to do as illustrators. Anybody out there that's been an illustrator knows that is you don't create, you don't replicate, you improve upon. So I've carried that over into my painting career. I'm not trying to just depict the exact colors that I see. What I'm trying to do is make them better, more interesting, give it, and you can take it both directions. You can take a bright color and you can make it more muted and turn it into something a little more moody, or you can take a very heavy color such as this. I'm still searching for the right color, by the way. There we go. And you can bring it a lot more light. So as we move down, I'm using a lot of ochre right now. And I want to make sure I get this dark enough so I can put the white tendrils of surf and water in there. Now, I noticed, I studied my reference earlier, and I noticed that this is casting a shadow right here because the ground plane is literally right there, right there. So that means it's going to be cooler. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take ultramarine blue, and we're going to try and make it dark enough because I'd rather have this tone, it's not dark enough, I'd rather have that tone right there be closer to this value, probably a little too dark. And this is where you color search a little bit. Now that feels pretty good. Maybe still a tad dark, a little more ochre thrown into it, and we're going to leave it at that. We're going to leave it right there. And that color is going to work its way here. And that's the ground at that point. So we're setting it up. And the whole idea is just to set this whole thing up. Then we'll go back and we'll start to make it work. Hopefully. That's the intent. Doesn't always work that way. Sometimes when it doesn't, that's when you, as I've said many times, you paint yourself into a corner and you find your way out. And we may do that today. Who knows? Hope not. Just vary the colors in here. So kind of go right down in here. We're going to have some surf come over this. Come back right here, clean it up. Some areas need to be a little cleaner. Some areas a little. But I stay with this big clumsy brush in the beginning for a few reasons. Number one, I don't want to paint too neat right now. If I'm too neat now, it means I'm going to try and be more neat as I progress. And pretty soon I'm going to paint myself into a corner where I just can't get, and it becomes, the whole painting becomes too brittle. So what I'm trying to do is keep a little energy and a little bit kind of excitement to the brushwork right now. Okay, these are little placeholders, as I call them. In other words, what they are is they're reminders that I need. That's an area I'm going to go in and I'm going to use more light. But I want to go a little darker right here at the base. A little more of the asphaltum. The warm helps. Kind of up in here. Got all this fun stuff going on. One of the nice things about rocks, I love painting rocks. You can just build and build and build. And rocks are one of the few things that I've painted that you can be wrong with as you paint them, as far as structure goes, and even color for that matter. Because if you go out in nature and you look around, you guys are going to notice rocks are all different kinds. I mean, I'm not telling you anything mind-boggling. So let's move not to the lights, but let's move to the darks. Again, I've not painted as dark as I want to back here, so I can move forward and bring that forward. So let's take some asphaltum, some ultramarine blue, which neutralizes it a little bit, mix it in with a little bit of white, what brings out the red in the asphaltum. Let's see what happens when we do this. Let's put that in. That's a little too warm for my taste. So I added more ultramarine. There, we're going to leave it at that right now. Put it in, bring it down, move it over. Again, paint slipping really nicely on the surface. There we go. It's a little on the warm side. So let's do a little more ultramarine and maybe a little bit of some variation in here. Some nice transparency here, by the way, because of the slippery characteristic of this board. So we're getting some interesting transparent brush strokes. The board is hardboard. It's a form of masonite. You can buy it at Home Depot if you want. You can get it cut to any dimension you want. 4 by 8 foot sheets, 2 by 4 foot sheets. You can buy it. Art stores carry it. It's a nice surface. It's a nice panel to work. I like working on it, but I like working on canvas too. So I switch. My favorite people have asked, well, what's your favorite surface to work on? Mine is linen, truthfully. But there aren't any of them that I really find to be a problem. I usually don't work on heavily textured, the very Russian canvases, the Yarkba type canvases. I've just found I don't care for those as much. Ooh.
So, Renee wants to know that if you're using white in your underpainting, you can end up getting white if you have a really rough.
My thoughts are yes. They can. Don't overuse it. I'm not using any white right now. I'm not using any white. A simple comment. I hear this a lot about whites. Tell me another way to go light. You can use Naples yellow, which is a pretty light color, but that has a color to it. So you can't lay in. I find, and I fell victim to this. You can be afraid of using white. And I've had some portrait students that are very afraid. Yet, if you look at the old John Singer Sargent paintings, there's a lot of white in those flesh tones. So don't be afraid of white. Just don't overuse it. Use it strategically. Right here, I'm definitely going to. This has white. This has a little white. We're going to kind of muff it up a little bit. I might even take, just for the heck of it, just to kind of get some different kinds of textures in there. I brought my knife, because rocks aren't exactly one dimension. So I'm going to set that number 12 down. I'm going to pick up what do I got here? Number 8, number 6, I think. Yeah, I'm going to pick, and I'm going to start to paint her in without hitting these lights. The lights are placeholders. Remember that. Not going to paint the little surfer boy in. So what are we going to do? Let's start with the hair. This I want to be almost the darkest part along with some of these areas. The difference is these areas I might let get a little warmer, and the hair I'm not going to. So I start with ultramarine blue, asphalt them, mixed it in there, and let's see how dark this. Look at that. Before that looked dark. Now she is standing out really nicely. So we're going to get the shape, the basic shape. I don't want a hard edge, so I'm pressing very lightly. Pressing really light to get kind of a nice edge characteristic. A little bit of light on the top of her head, we'll leave it. That feels okay. So now we're going to paint the body of the dress. It's lighter, right? So I'm going to use white. And off to the side, I'm the same color that I just had in. I think we're going to try this. And that feels surprisingly pretty good. I say surprisingly because it's my first shot. And usually, as I've mentioned many times, first shot, I usually don't get it. A little bit of medium, so it goes on. We're being a little bit more controlled now. There's a pattern on the dress, which I'm going to put in there because it gives a focal point. Pattern's cool if you use it properly, and it can get overbearing if you don't. But in this case, I think it'll work. Good question. I work on both. If I'm working larger, the thicker masonite is a little bit better. If I'm working smaller, I prefer the thin. If I'm working on location, I prefer the thin. It's just a matter of carrying it. You know what? You don't want to carry weight. So that's an artist question. Definitely. Okay. Go back to a little bit in front of her. We see just a little bit of her breast there. It almost looks like a sarong, you guys. It's really interesting. Now I could darken the ground plane behind her a little bit if I want to, right there, and just move it over gently. And all of a sudden, without painting on her, I've made her more readable. Now, a couple other things are going on there. There's a little bit of a cast shadow. This is why I'm using more control. Comes out here and works its way down. It's a little too dark. But right now it's okay. And I want to soften it into that dress. So there we did. Now go back and just soften it right in. So we don't see a clear edge. Now, if you take a look at her flesh tone is in shadow, very warm and darker than the dress. I can use almost, I'm just going to try it. This is burnt sienna right out of the tube. Probably a little bit more red than I want. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tone it down with a little blue. Little blue. Not much. Let's try the shoulder. You know what? I like it better, just this plain burnt sienna. Control now. Where before, when I was painting the rock, much different. The way I was using the paintbrush. You guys, hopefully you notice that. I'm using the paintbrush much differently. It's an elbow out there. I like that because it's almost lost in the background. And I know that with a rim light, which is what she's got on her, that I'm going to be able to power her body out of this whole thing. So as it goes into light, it gets what a lot of people refer to as the core, which means it gets a little darker. So what I'm doing as it goes into the shoulder, a little bit lighter. Same with the lower arm. Lower arm. Now that's way too dark. So what do you do? Fix it. Be wrong and fix it rather than worry yourself to death. Leg. Knees comes out here. This little pen sketch, I'm hoping, is somewhat correct proportionally. It looked like it was, but a lot of times I can't tell until I start getting things massed in.
Marty has a question. Do you generally use the same colors on your palette for studio?
Yes, I usually do. I'll tell you a difference. That's actually a super question. I'll explain to you why. If I'm working on a painting for a long period of time in the studio, by long period I mean maybe a few days, what I will do often is change up my palette. I will add more colors to it, only when I feel it's necessary. But I usually work with what I call a workhorse or a 9-color palette. Let me guess. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 colors. 9 colors, 9-color palette. So I know artists that work, I've seen artists work and have up to 30 color. In fact, I knew one artist that laid out 2 palettes. It's just, for me, it's unnecessary. You know, and it has to do with how I work. So for some artists, lots of colors, they love it. I just say lots of colors give you more opportunity to make lots of mistakes. So the more you can simplify your palette, and if you're plein air, I'm a big proponent of simplifying. Sometimes I'll work with like a 4 or 5 color palette in plein air. Usually I'll have a 6 to 8, somewhere in that range for plein air. Like the radiant blue, for example, it's kind of a specialty color, and I don't always, if I'm working on location, I don't always lay that out. All right, let's put a little bit of, I see a few little holes. Some of it I know because of anatomy. You know that it's going to pull in some areas. It's a little darker. Right before, again at the core. Yeah, I like it very much. Birch panel's lighter weight. I like it a lot, actually. The only thing I've seen with birch panel, if they get too big, they warp on you. Unless you cradle it. But I do like it. Carefully. I wish I had a sensible answer. The only way, truthfully, carefully, you really, you know, I usually find a spot where I haven't laid a lot of paint on to carry it that way. And the largest I've done is 30-40. So never done anything larger. I know there's a couple of guys that work bigger. So it's just one of those things. I'm going to start to add a little life to some of this with a little light. So I took Naples yellow, white, and a little bit of the asphaltum, a little thicker paint. I'm going to pick up a little medium with it, a little solvent-free gel, and I'm going to look carefully. I'm going to get a little texture in here too. So I'm not going to try and paint that flat. Every now and then I'll pick, like I just did, a little bit more asphaltum, and I'll kind of smear that into it. So we're adding the top surface to that, and I'll manipulate that in a little bit. Not right now. I'm going to actually add a little bit of a blue to it, just because I want more color variation. I mentioned this right in the beginning. I hate for anything to get too simplified and flat. It's just, particularly when you're dealing with something organic like a rock, you know, it can really. Oh, the other thing, and I've mentioned this when I've painted in the past, and I know that, is that I like to save my darkest darks and lightest lights for the very end. So she's going to have a lot more illumination. In fact, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do a pattern on her dress, but not now. And this is more or less an alla prima plein air type approach. Good question. Say that again. Last question. Oh yeah, I mentioned that. I used matte medium, and it's primed with matte medium, which is an acrylic, and it seals it completely. You can use things like I know when I was in school we used what the heck was it? Shellac, and shellac will do it too. So you do what feels comfortable, but this, and I try different things all the time because I'll just play around with surfaces. So we're going to put a little bit more, so it's a little thicker. And I don't mind when it starts smearing into other parts of it. Okay, so we've created a little bit of light on the top of that rock. And right about here, right behind her leg, use a brush too big. Don't take a little tiny brush and try and do this. The scale of the brush will actually create some of the interesting characteristics of rock. Okay. White, yellow ochre, little turf. The paint was feeling like it was dragging. It was dragging. And as soon as it begins to feel like that, you got to add medium of some sort, be it turf, be it linseed, anything. So we're going to come in here, same kind of similar color, a little bit different, maybe a little more There we go. Kind of firmness to the top of that rock. Don't want to do the same length of stroke every time. Sometimes I want my edge to be created that way as to always coming across it. A lot of interesting colors and characteristics. A little cooler. I just noticed that when I glanced up, I noticed as it came forward, it got a little bit darker and cooler. So I added a little bit of asphaltum and a little blue, and then it gets light right here. A lot of screaming light. We'll put that in at the end. So I'm saving those lights. Don't like that edge. Okay. This is going to go white, so I'm not going to do it right now. Out in here, there's a lot more warmth. So I've added more asphaltum, a little bit of ochre, same color. I want it darker. Well, maybe not. You know what? Because there's going to be surf back there. So somewhere in this range. It's actually really close to the color of the board, except I'd like to make it a little cooler. Added a little bit more blue. I kind of like the color I just laid on there, right there. Keep your brush going a lot of different directions, guys. Don't just do one type of a stroke. There's a rock. I don't like that rock at the bottom, but I do like all this. I think I can create a little bit more interest on the edge there. Let me see what I can do. I don't want it going right in the corner. So we're going to bring that up a little bit, maybe here. And then put those darks back in, meaning like that. I'm going to take a peek at my time, see where I'm at. Okay, about 35 minutes in, so we're in pretty good shape. Because I want to put a lot of interest time into this, even on the edges. Maybe use a little bit of knife here and there to create some different types of characteristics. Okay, that's starts to feel like a rock there. Okay, let's drop that for a second. Go back to my number 6. So far I've used 3 brushes. I'm just kind of keeping you informed. I've used a 6, a 12, and what's that other one? Is that a 12 too? Yeah, maybe a 10. Huh? I want to bring. I just noticed that when I looked, some more darks over here. A little bit of a dark up in here. Not quite as dark. So I just took the same color I was using, added white to it. And we'll go too light. Try it one more time. Want a little bit of that rock coming out in front of her. I'm not going to make it as long. Kind of bothers me. So we're going to bring it there. Bring a little bit of cool. So I'm going to go back to the blues. And we'll come in and we'll paint. That's a little bluer than I wanted. Just moved a little bit of and then we'll go like there. That feels pretty good. It might be a little too dark. So I'm just picking up colors randomly that are pretty close to the same value. Because that is not a direct sun. All right. Don't like the shape of her foot. Don't like the shape of her knee. But you know what? They're not done yet. So if I don't like them when it's done, that's a big problem. Okay. So we kind of have everything covered now. So let me think. Let's go back and start up here and work our way down again. Okay. So we have everything kind of laid in. So first thing I'm going to do is take a big brush, 10 flat, it's one of my rosemaries, take some white, some medium, some Naples. Naples is sunlight for me. All right. but it's got to be it's got to be loose enough paint so I can do this. Put a little more Naples into it, or excuse me, ochre. A little green maybe, huh? There's a little moss every now and then I see back in here. Ever so slight color changes. And we'll bring it up here, a little bit more ochre. I don't have to be verbatim correct on the rocks either. Keep that in mind. You know, you can use a lot of artistic license in here, and what you indicate, what you leave alone. The bigger you paint, so we're starting to get a little bit of that. There is variations in here, which I kind of like. So I'm going to grab some ultramarine, and we're going to go. Let's test it. Little more ultramarine than I wanted. So we're painting kind of some of the shadowy stuff into the rock. Some of the shadow structure, I guess we could call it. Believe it or not, that's color. But it basically, I've said to people, it's basically like a black and white. So what you see is the way it is. There is a slight amount of color to it, not even close to this. I'll pull it up as I get more complete and show you what I mean by that, because it's the colors that I'm dealing with are completely invented. There's nothing like that in the photograph. And that's, once again, I know I brought this up earlier. Once again, that's one of the wonderful things you get as an illustrator, that kind of in having to invent things and not paint things exactly. You're not just duplicating. You're actually creating. Sometimes more. Take a painting and turn it into a night painting. Sometimes you're asked to add snow. So there's all kinds of things. And until you try it, I was challenged when I was an illustrator to have to do it. And so you kind of teach yourself. And what you do is you start looking at all these other artists that have done things throughout the years, and you say, what did they do? And you try and figure it out and add your own little touches to it. You learn from there and keep it in the back of your head. A good friend of mine calls it your reservoir of information. And so now let's come on this rock, do a little bit. We can always go back in and add more. I can see a little bit more here and there that I could bring in. Okay. So let's take the foreground rock. A lot of white, a lot of Naples, and medium. The medium makes it lay down easy. So we're going to start up. We're going to just barely hit a little bit up here. And if you guys are noticing, I am really not pressing hard. Down about here, doesn't have to be the same spot, but you see a lot more activity. I also see it get a little bit more color. So I threw a little bit more ochre into that color. Felt like I was getting a little too white. sometimes when I put my brush down, I'm shaping the tip. I'm shaping it to a narrower, so I can make. So every time I put my brush down, sometimes I put it down, I'm loading paint. Sometimes I'm just rearranging the tip of the brush. Smear it into the paint. That big dark hole I'm not crazy about, so we'll fix that. We'll keep going. I don't like some of this in here. I think I need more information, but there is a little bit more piercing light. So I added white and medium. And it's right here at the base. Just use those kind of little hairs. And while I've got that color, I'm going to add more white to it. Bring it over to the side, a lot more medium. And we're going to put in a little bit of the surf. First area is right back on these rocks. A little pull away right here. Right about here. Yeah, I've been asked that times. My medium choice oils, because for me, it's the most difficult, and I just there's so many different variations you can get with oil. So I don't absolutely, the other mediums are all wonderful, like them all. But my medium at present, I painted. I know I've mentioned this many times. I painted for so many years in acrylics as an illustrator, and so I became really comfortable with acrylics, but I can't get this wonderful viscosity. I can to a degree, but nowhere near what I can get with oils. I'm gonna mess her leg up a little bit, just simply due to the fact that, but since I haven't finished off the leg, it really doesn't matter. Yeah, two different mediums. One is safflower oil, and in this case, I mixed a little safflower oil in this little container off to the right here. Safflower oil with a little bit of an alkyd walnut oil for the first time. I have not done that usually. The other medium that I use a lot is this solvent-free gel by Gamblin. And I use that a lot. That's primarily what I'm using right now as we speak. So we'll get the feeling of that kind of the surf happening right here. Again, I'm going to mess her up a little bit. It's just the nature, knowing what you need to do, and that's why I didn't refine her. Sparkle right back in here. A lot of sparkle, right? So you don't want to paint those little dots. So I just do a dry brush. Let my dry brush do the work. And it'll make it feel like that. And here, let's see, I got it back in there. Oh, I just noticed something. I kind of like that. Let me see what I can do here. The rock comes down and then it comes back. I'm going to leave that alone. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of, I took blue and white, added it to that color. I don't know if this is going to work, but I think I need it. All I'm trying to do is show the edge that it's moist. This is all wet sand. And wet sand will pick up a little bit more of the sky. Okay, we'll leave it alone. That helped. I don't like this right now. That could definitely have a little bit more color variation. So little ochre. Let's see what happens here. Another thing, I just noticed this too. A little bit of reflection. Right down there. And that's a little heavy-handed. Okay. Now, one thing I didn't do is, as I was painting this part of the rock right here, it continues up here and just almost covers. And there's a little bit of color and tonal variation back. And a little piece of light that I'm just discovering, right? There. Okay, so now let's move around a little bit more. Got a lot of stuff to deal with here. So I'm going to go back to her now. I felt like I've kind of got a few things under control. Not maybe as much as I want. I can bring a little. Okay. Felt like it was a little dead there. So I'm going to go into her with this number 6. We're going to put a little pattern in her dress. We're going to keep them on the warm side since it's her. So I've taken alizarin, a little bit of blue because I want to tone the alizarin down, but I want it to be warm, dark. And we're going to go right here. Start to put some of that pattern in. That felt a little too red, so I'm throwing a little bit more ultramarine into that red. Still more. Try it again. There we go. Let's try that. I want the busyness of the pattern, not the exactness. One thing I found, if I try and be too perfect when I do this kind of stuff, I end up not liking it if I look at it a day later. So what I find is if I'm a little freer and looser, I can always go back and bring some control to it if I need to. But it's just got a lot more of a spontaneous, kinetic reference here. Huh? That's looking okay. She's going to come alive, hopefully, once I start lighting her. But I got to get enough, I call it substructure in there, where it's just not a flat color and all of a sudden you like the flat color. You still need some structure in that underlying color. And that's pretty much what I'm doing here. I can see a little bit of darkness where her arm overlaps her torso right there. And I see a little bit of darkness. I get it, but I'm going to pull it now, soften it. A little bit darker in the shoulder before you hit the light. And the elbow. Some of this stuff is really faint. You can almost not see it. So you got to be kind of careful. So let's fix the leg after I messed it up a little bit, huh? Picked up the light. There's more light under the foot. Okay. See if there's any more I want to do with her right now. I don't think so. I think I'm going to wait and illuminate here because that's going to be the fun part. So I don't want to do it right now. It's tempting. You always want to kind of go in and make it look better. And you know you can. But I kind of want to hold off on that a little bit and play with some of the other areas that I think needs a little bit of work. So let's move up again, okay? Go back to one of our big brushes. Let's take this big old clumsy number 12. Oh, you know what I haven't done? I haven't done this over here. So I'm going to lay in some cool colors. Let's see what we got. That's ultramarine, ochre, and white. A little bit more ochre. I mean, excuse me, a little more blue, a little more white. Let's try it again. This is the kind of stuff, truthfully, that in doing a long painting, you can, every day you can go in and find new nuances that you want to begin to add into it. In an alla prima or an all at once painting, you just kind of have to trust yourself, go for it, and leave it alone. And if you feel like you want to the next day, go back and do something. And I know a lot of people have asked me. I generally don't. My enthusiasm on a piece lasts as long as my intent does. And my intent when I do a plein air type piece such as this is to do it in one shot. So I generally don't go back and do much work. I might go back and work maybe another 20 minutes or so, but very seldom do I work any longer than that. But I sure am getting some interesting colors in that foreground rock. I like that. So now I want to go back into this. Don't like this area right here. Back to my semi-neutrals. By that, I mean asphaltum and umber together. And that'll give me a really strong dark. So I want to mix enough light into it so it doesn't become a really overpowering dark. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to break some of this stuff up a little bit, like there. Just let the tip of the brush do the work. Again, I'm going to use one of my lines that I've used many, many times. You let the brush do the work. You don't do, if you do the work, you're probably overworking it. You let the brush go down and make the mark, and you just barely guide it. Don't force it. If you force it, it's good. The whole piece will look forced. So you can't always get that perfect edge that you want. This is why you come back and you do this. This is how you create those edges. If you want a thin line and you put down a thick line, just come in and chip away until you get that line becomes thin. So I see cooler colors in here. Again, it's not really obvious because the photo, as someone brought up, the photo does appear near black and white. So I'm unifying these colors by bringing blues, by bringing some more. But I also want to liven it up and bring some warmth to it. Now I'm going to bring some life to it. Ochre, separate spot in my palette, so I'm not intermixing. A little bit of burnt sienna. A little bit more burnt sienna. Widen this area up a little bit. I'm getting back from it just so I can get a feel. So I stood back for a second. Looks like I could add a few more neutrals up in here. Back to that burnt sienna and ochre. I feel like I'm making the same stroke too many times, so I need some big strokes to counter all those little tiny areas that I'm dealing with. a little bit more ochre, a little bit more burnt sienna, and I need some medium so it lays on top. If I don't put the medium on, I have to force the paint down. When I force the paint down, I push it into those colors and it becomes part of it. So if I want that paint to stand out, I have to have a degree of wetness to it. I'm using this little study that I did in terms of color because I knew I wanted to change it. So I'm using a little bit of that to help guide me. What? Really red there. Okay, let's, before I go too much further with this, I'm going to start to illuminate this. I think I'm going to need a knife, too, truthfully. In fact, let's lay this in. Let's do it with a knife. So, Naples yellow, white, medium, a little bit more white, a little bit more medium. So I have a little pile of paint. So if I pick up paint, see that paint is, I mean, I won't pick it up that thick, but you can see it paint's pretty thick. So let's put an edge on this one. So there's certain marks you can get with a knife that you cannot get with a brush. And that's the reason that some people use knives. Other people just like piling paint on. I'm going to take a brush now. I got tired of using the knife. Add some more ochre to it. I'm going to take a look at my time just so I get a feel for how much more I want to put into it before I start. Oh, okay. I got almost 30 minutes. So get a little bit under here. Fix that edge. I don't like that knife with the knife laid down. Same up there. Got a little too heavy-handed and thick, so you fix it. It's pretty simple. It's not like it's rocket science to fix things. Okay. Oh, what the heck I was thinking there. So we're going to take, let's illuminate her. And once I get her illuminated, then, where's my little liner? My little liner. I'll use this brush for right now. A little sable bright that I'm using. I'm going to take white blue, a little medium, and I'll tell you why I'm going to use the blue. This model has very black hair, so it catches a little bit of blue skylight. Oh, that's better. I prefer to use a liner on this. I can splay the edges, and by doing that, I can create more of the feeling of hair. This is ultramarine and white, nothing more. Ultramarine white, a little bit of a glow. So you can see already what the illumination is doing. Now I still have this color, that white. So for that, it's a very yellow white. The sunlight is more warm. So I put it up there, using my little finger down on this, just so you guys are knowing. So we got a little light there. Let's go on her shoulder. Really light. And then a little light. Comes down the side of her shoulder and almost a sliver. We just get just a sliver of light there. Picks up the deltoid. Goes back in along what we would call her bicep. So if you set everything up properly, value and color wise, this should work. If you haven't, it's not going to work. So let's try a little bit out on the front of where her breast would be, right about there. So she's coming to life a little bit now. And then we'll go down on her arm. I don't like that stroke. I'll have to clean that up. It's working okay. And the top of her leg, a lot of brightness. Let's start with the knee. And then so you can see she's starting to work. I have to keep stepping back because I'm checking anatomy. I'm checking things of that nature. Do I have the proportions correct? And I've often come back to a painting and realized that I had some things wrong that I didn't like. Like I brought that over too far. I can tell right now. I'll hopefully fix it. And we'll come down. That's her kneecap, down here on her shin. What I like to do also sometimes, I'm going to take a little bit of this blue, not that I use on her hair, not quite that light, but I am going to let a little bit of blue skylight hit back on the side of that arm, back there. That's it. Okay, let's try it. Keep going. Down on her ankle. And on the top of her foot, her toe. Whoa, it's a clumsy stroke. Sometimes if I'm painting really loose, I'll do strokes like that and just leave them. And if I want to paint neater, I'll put them in like that, and then I'll go back and fix it. So I might come back with the foot color. And fix something like that. That's a little bit better. I don't like the waviness of that leg, but I didn't hit it as bright and as strong as I could anyway. So I can come in one more time. Okay. A couple things I want to fix real quick, and then I want to move to other areas because I don't want to dwell too long. I could play on this for quite a while, but I don't want to. I want that, and I want some of the pattern to interrupt. There, that feels better. The pattern interrupts now. Bad foot. Sounds like the name of a group, doesn't it? Okay, so. You're absolutely right. Bad foot. Okay. Let's take white with the color that I was using, so it's really, really white. But it's just a touch of maple. And I said, when I was painting this, that at this point, it got really white. There. That's why I like to save my whites or lights to the end, so I can push. So we got a little texture on that rock now. Feels like light. Also, a little bit of it above. So let's do it up there too. Let's put it down here. A little bit more light in there. This is just enhancing. So what you're doing is you're taking what you've already done and you're giving it a little bit more, so to speak. And you say a little bit more what? A little bit more structure, a little bit more volume, a little bit more information. And you can do that over and over under. Come in here, fix that. Didn't like that. There's some little divots. And then I noticed very faintly see a little beginning. I look very carefully. This is a bad photo to do this, but I can begin to see just a little bit of shadow detail.
That's a good painting.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thanks. I try really hard. I just found my favorite critic right here.
Are you gonna draw that guy right there?
Nah, I'm not going to do that guy. It just, I don't like him. I don't like him in this picture. I like it just to be about her. I think somebody already asked that question. If I was going to do him. I wasn't. I want to get some more interest going up in here and a few more darks because I haven't gone as dark. Big old number 12. And actually, alizarin. Alizarin is your dark warm. And now I'm going to add some darks. Is that dark? So what happens is the color that I laid down initially becomes a mid-tone. It is not the darkest dark. I don't want to make this rock go behind that rock. Just darken it like that. Blend it into the rock. Put a little bit of structure in here. I'm going to add a little blue to that color just because it felt like it needed it. So the dark and the warm helps it come forward. That's my main reason for doing that. So now, with the time I have left, I'm going to take a look. Oh, good. I'm going to go back and start to amplify some of the colors in these rocks. I'm going to bring a little bit more ochre to this color. right here.
Nice hold.
Huh?
Nice hold.
I'm testing colors now, you guys. I'm just trying to see how far I can push things without it looking really ridiculous. It's a cooler rock. Actually, I was painting on location, and I noticed that while I was painting, that this one rock, this one cliff that comes up is quite a bit cooler than the others. And it's got to be minerals. It's not lighting. Getting back. This feels a little hollow right now, okay? So what that means is I need to add something in there. This is the key as you paint these things. Keep your eye moving. Don't dwell in any one spot too long. If you do, you're just going to keep working that one spot and you'll probably overwork it. So it's much better to kind of keep your eye kind of darting through the picture. Well, just color variation. I'm seeing it. I'm just amplifying it. I'm just taking it much more exaggerated than I see it in the reference. Like you said, this photograph is almost. It's probably true on screen because the first thing I said is almost like working from a black and white photograph, which it is. Shades of working for old movie studios when you get lots of black and white photographs to work from, and then you have them bring the color to it that you felt it needed.
That's really something.
I do. Rocks have got a specific kind of structure to them, and they're much more abrupt and not as clear cut of an edge as other subjects may have. And because of that, you can kind of work on a very loose kind of an edge characteristic when you're painting any sort of a rock formation. Looking, oh, there's a little piece of rock sticking out here. I don't want to put that in. Now, do I want to enhance her outfit at all? I'm not sure. I'm going to try a couple things here. Just to break some of the pattern up a little bit. So I only painted, when I painted the pattern, I painted positives. Now I'm painting some negatives. And I generally do that whether I paint trees, hair, people, anything. I'll paint positives and then I will paint negatives. Little piece of light dancing there. Some of this bothers me in here as I glance back at it. It feels a little heavy-handed, so I might kind of come back and chip away at it. Same with in here. Look in here. This is okay. I don't like that. So let me step back. I want to bring a little bit more life. I did a little study earlier, and I brought a little bit more life to this rock. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that with a knife, see if it works. So I'm going to bring ochre and a little bit of burnt sienna, and we'll see what I can come up with here. don't be afraid. I mean, the worst that I can do is I can mess this up. All right, that's the worst. Oh, I like that. That gave me a texture. There's no way I can get that texture with a paintbrush. You put it in and take it out. Just build those textures in. If you don't like them, either scrape them out or pile another color on top. But if you're timid, it shows. If you're bold and wrong, it's better sometimes than if you're timid and you're maybe 100% accurate. But it tends to look so forced. I'll tell you what, I do like the rock stuff I'm getting with the knife better than when I was painting it. So I might, also it's kind of a fun textural adventure, so to speak. Those are a little too harsh for my taste. So what do? You just move them around, make them less harsh. Here, break into some of those cools.
So Nate wants to know, are there any techniques you might use for suggesting there's a difference in the rock minerals rather than changing the light?
Yeah, I mean, the techniques, well, let me give you an example. Let's say you're painting what we call a river rock, which is, those have been tumbled and they're very smooth and rounded. You don't paint them as harshly, but you don't paint them like you would be painting a beach ball either. And so you might use a brush, lay it in there, and then soften over it. Sometimes I'll do that, but I love craggy rocks like this where they have all this kind of gooey texture, because you can come in and just treat it with just by letting your brush, as I said, do the work. So I'm not sure beyond that what you mean. You have, there's many tools you can work with. All right. Example, you can put a stable with a bristle. You can work with a long handle filbert. You can work with, I'm added some colors if you haven't noticed, but felt a little flat belt. You can work with a knife. You can work with a rag. You can work with a sponge. You can work with a sponge brush. I know people sometimes that will take pieces of cardboard and paint with pieces of cardboard. So everyone has to find out what works for them. And it's how you achieve. So a paintbrush, and the way you use a paintbrush, I mean, you guys see me use this, I use more control. So just the way you use your brush can have a lot to do with the kind of characteristic of the rock. Don't overforce it. That's the only thing I know I've said that 100. Don't overforce it. That will be the death of any piece that you do. I like to pile paint on paint. So, and when you do, shift the color a little bit. If you shift that color, sometimes just guess. If you're unsure, make a wild guess. And if you're wrong, wipe it out, do something else. So I like the texture I'm getting up here. think I want to get a little bit more whiteness right in there. And I'm fortunate I have a little bit of extra time. I got about 5 minutes left, it looks like. And I think what I might do in that last 5 is take that light color, add some more white to it and some more medium. So it's like a little pile of paint I have here on my palette. But I can come in and I can re-enhance some of these areas even more so. Just laying color on color. I'm doing it with a brush. I could be doing it with a knife. And kind of what I'm doing is I'm thinking to myself, where is the light coming from? Where is it going to hit stronger? I'm also using my reference. I'm doing a combination of using knowledge and reference, which to me, all great painting is. It's not just one or the other. Sometimes it's the knowledge that you've acquired. Whoa, I'm being drowned out by a rolling cart. I'm pushing violets now, just for the heck of it. Look, I just saw it. And I'm trying to clean this, keep it back, but still keep it in the range that I wanted it. I started pushing some violets. One of the things that I wanted to lighten this, I don't think I have this as light as I would like it. So I've taken some blues, just kind of pushing paint back into it because I want it to sit back further. Also, any of the color that comes through, just this texture, is rock texture. So it goes up. I like what I just did, actually. I'm glad I did that. I'll tell you when I don't like things, when I do. That worked. And a little bit of texture back in here so it isn't just a sky. Same here. I have a little gray earth tone in my brush, so I can actually come into and add some textural aspects back in here. Really, the further back you go in distance, the closer your value. And the more you come forward, 2 things happen. You want it to get warmer and you want to increase your value contrast. So that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to bring it warmer as we came here and increase the value contrast. Now, you can see a little bit of light right about there. Oh, we got all kinds of sounds, guys. This is kind of interesting.
Well, I was here when he was setting up. It was a blank canvas. What an amazing turnaround in a short time. You were cleaning the windows. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
I'm going to step back just for a second. Okay, I've gotten what I wanted out of this in terms of color intensity, because the photograph, as you so rightly noticed and mentioned, is quite dull. Yet I saw potential in it because I loved the lady on the rock there. So I really enjoyed that. I was really happy. And I've had this photo sitting around. I've given it some thought for a period of time, thinking, what can I do to it? And so I will show you last night, I said, what am I going to do this Friday? I talked to myself a lot. And I went back to this photo. I made the decision yesterday afternoon. After we came in, it was kind of windy, and we said, let's just go inside. And so I said, I'm going to do a little study of this and see if I can make this thing work, because it was pretty boring. So what I did is I came back in. I'm going to pull this up for if I can right now. And I did that little study, little 5x7 study. And that's what I used, kind of the thinking in that, in the color. Now, there's some things that I do like in that study that I just didn't get a good look at. One is I like some of the cools that I had right in here. More of a big blue, gray, violet. Let me explain something. But by pushing this here, it takes this rock and brings it out in front. So if I utilize those colors like in there, I can bring big, simple, bring this rock forward and keep that rock back. Didn't mean to pick up the ochre there, but keep that rock back. And that's why you don't want to take everything and make it outrageously dark immediately, because you're not leaving yourself any room. So by doing that, now, what don't I like? I don't have the shape of her foot down very well. And I could take a little liner and use the foam behind right here. And make her ankle a lot nicer. And any little touch-ups, this is what I would do right at the end, which is where we're at. So, but any little brights I wanted to put out here on the forearm, any of that I would do right at the very end. So I like to, as I've said, I like to save all my brights, really strong brights, right towards the end. And I think we're going to pretty much call it quits. Need to thank the Academy for loaning us the help that we always get from them. I'd also like to thank Ralph and Diane Waterhouse for allowing me to sit out in front of their gallery here and do art. We always thank Anna, because Anna makes the whole thing work.
You always stand up when you're painting?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Oh, well, you know what? 90% of the time.
Okay, yeah.
Sometimes at the very end, I will sit down.
Uh-huh.
But I just, the main reason I stand up is I like to step back constantly. Yeah. And then I can get back. Still don't like the foot.
I was saying, you kind of remember you saying many years ago, detail the light and simplify the shadow, simplify the light.
Yep.
Detail the shadow.
Yeah. If you don't want the same amount of information in both arenas, and in this case, most of the information and the excitement is in the shadow. And the light is relatively simplified. I could definitely play games back in here and get some brights that I can see every now and then. But overall, that's about it. I'm not going to do it anymore. I will say goodbye. I got people. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? I just got here.
Okay, thank you all for viewing, and we'll see you next week.